Hello and welcome back to Supposedly Fun. My name is Greg and I am here today to do a Friday Reads video where I wrap up the week in reading and talk about any exciting bookish things that have gone on in the world. This has been a very quiet week for anything going on in the bookish world, so there won't really be much to talk about before we jump into the actual Friday Reads portion of this video, which I know will thrill some of the new people who have joined my channel recently. I've gotten a lot of comments, or a fair amount, not a lot, but a couple of comments from people saying that they wish in my Friday Reads video I would start talking about the books a little bit sooner. And the thing is, I like having chatty Friday Reads. I enjoy the way this works, and I know there are other people, a lot of other people, who have commented and said that they like that as well. So, sorry if you want me to jump to the books, but I like this chatty portion, and I know a lot of other people do as well. What I have done is I've started putting a timestamp down below, so if you would rather jump to the Friday Reads portion of the video, you can do that. I don't have any interest in creating really specific timestamps for different parts of the discussion or books that I will be talking about, but if you are really wanting to get to the Friday Reads, you can jump to that. It's an option that exists down there, unless I forget to do it. But I've done it pretty consistently for the last few weeks, so it seems to be now into the workflow of a Friday Reads. Not much else has gone on in the bookish world. I do want to talk about my t-shirt. So I mentioned a couple of weeks ago that Montana Book Company got a 1-star review on Google from a customer, and the text of that review was ludicrous. So they turned it into a 1-star review t-shirt, and proceeds from this went to charity. So I have this t-shirt on. I love it. It's really great. I love the color too, actually. And this sale is still ongoing for a limited time, so I will include a link to it down below. The proceeds from it go to Unite Against Book Bans and the American Library Association in order to help fight book bans. So just a fun way of doing that and getting some more bookstore merchandise. I love bookstore merchandise, and if you're here, I'm willing to bet you probably do as well. That's it for bookish stuff that has gone on. I will give you a quick Teddy update. So Teddy is doing really well. We love him. We adore him. He still does not understand the concept of a work day. That's the only struggle that I'm having with him right now. So I will put a photo right here. This is what I'm dealing with pretty much all day, every day. And it's adorable. And I love that he loves me that much, and I love him that much. But it does make it a little hard to get work done. The only time he growls is when he really wants you to play with him. And he has sometimes started growling while I'm on the phone for work. So I was sitting here, on the phone, on my laptop, and all of a sudden he just started running in a circle around my chair going, roar, 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 and my boss heard it. It's fine. My boss is a dog person, so it was not that bad. But yeah, so that's the struggle I'm having right now. But he is the sweetest little boy, and just, we love having him. We're so glad he has found his way to us. And right now he is in the living room on the couch with Joel. Joel very kindly decided to distract him so I could film this video. But he's doing great. He's settling in nicely, and we love having him. So that's kind of your update. Again, that's the only real struggle I'm having with Teddy. Just, he'll get there. He'll start to learn about a work day, and that, lunchtime I will play with him. Guinness eventually got there. And Jamie was usually very chill during the day anyway. Just, she would bark out the window if something was going on. Teddy doesn't bark out the window, at least not yet. Maybe when he gets a little more comfortable in the house, he will. But right now he's not, and that is pretty cool. But and thank you for all the kind words. He has just been a joy for both Joel and I, and really helped heal our hearts after losing Guinness and Jamie over the last 2 years. So that has been good. Let's get to the actual Friday Reads portion of this video. So I finished 2 books this week, which is pretty good for me. I feel like I'm starting to recover and get back on the horse a little bit. After we lost Jamie at the end of August, my reading really suffered in the month of September for obvious reasons. It is what it is. I had a lot of stuff that I needed to work through, and it just had to play itself out. And Teddy's arrival in the house seems to have jump-started my ability to, read and enjoy reading. So that has been pretty good. So I finished 2 books. I started a third, but I have not made it very far at all. So over the weekend, I picked up a library book that I had, which is Glaciers by Alexis M. Smith. This actually jumped onto my radar because Tin House, which is the publisher of this edition as well, reissued it, and I didn't actually realize that it was a reissue. I thought it was a new book, and the cover of it is incredibly striking. I will put an image of the reissue here, and I think you'll see visually it is pretty stunning and arresting. I was scrolling through Instagram and immediately stopped on this when I saw it. It's that cool. But when I requested it from the library, or looked it up to see if my library had a copy, it said that the release date was 2012, which confused me. So I looked into it and realized that it was a reissue. So my library has the original edition of the book that was published in 2012, not the reissue. And that's fine. So here's the original. Again, not as grabbing as the new one, but it does have thematic resonance for the book. This is a tiny little thing. It is barely over 100 pages. Oh, no, actually it is not barely over 100 pages. It's 174 pages. However, the print is not tiny and the margins are very large. So you can get through this book really quickly. I actually didn't do it in one day. I started it on Saturday, I think, and finished it on Sunday. So it did carry over, but that's only because there was a lot going on Saturday. So I didn't have enough time to really sit with it. I liked this. This is a book that does not, strictly speaking, have a plot, but that's fine, again, because it's short and because Alexis Smith is actually a pretty gorgeous writer. So this follows a woman. I'm blanking on what her name is, Isabel. And basically, it's a day in her life. However, during that day, of course, she has flashbacks to her childhood, which was in Alaska, and the glaciers and the things that she saw when she was there. And she reflects on her childhood, where she is now. She currently works for a library helping preserve books. And that sort of ties into the rest of her life. She's fascinated by vintage clothing and things that she finds in thrift stores, things that have a past or a history. And she loves imagining what that past or that history is and how they came to be in this place and with her. And she thinks about a lot of things in her life. This is a book where she's really reflecting on the passage of time and how you can't get certain things back. She's sort of uncertain about her future. There is an environmental component to this because the glaciers from her childhood are sort of going away. And that definitely adds a layer of resonance. I had actually been thinking that I could use this for the climate fiction prompt on the Montana Book Company Challenge, but I've been waffling back and forth because it's not present enough that it makes me feel like it would be a bit of a cheat if I do that. But it is an element that is in the book. So I don't know. I haven't fully decided, but right now I think I'm just going to leave it alone and not use it for that prompt. But there's definitely a component of that sort of environmental aspect of it where it's really just about the passage of time. And she gets ready for work. She goes to work. She has been having a flirtation with, it's a very mild flirtation, but she is interested in a male coworker of hers who's nicknamed Spoke. He seems to be interested in her as well, and she's hoping that she will be able to invite him to a party. On her lunch break, she goes to a vintage store and shops for a dress that she can wear to this party, and just reflects on her life during all of this. So you do sort of follow her through the day, but as she reflects, it sort of moves back and forth like waves, ebbing and flowing in time. And it's really interesting. Again, there's not, strictly speaking, a whole lot of plot, and I liked it anyway. I thought Alexis M. Smith is a really beautiful writer. I would be very interested in looking to see what else she has done. I haven't looked to see if she has any other books out there or if she has any coming out, but I would be very interested in seeing what else she can do because the way she writes and builds this universe is great. And I wouldn't say it all works. I wish it packed a bit more of a punch. However, I did really enjoy this, and I'm glad that I got it from my library. And I'm glad that there is a new edition out there that will hopefully allow more people to discover this. It has a blurb on the back from Karen Russell. I don't know if that will appeal to anyone, but yeah, I enjoyed this book, and I would recommend it, especially since, again, it's really tiny. I could have gotten through this in a single day. It's just that I didn't really have a lot of time to sit down with a book on Saturday, so I ended up reading it on Saturday and Sunday. And then I started another physical book, but I have not made my way very far. I will talk about it in a moment. Let's talk about the audio instead. So last week I mentioned that I had started the audio of To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. The audio is narrated by Sissy Spacek. And last week I talked about how it had seemed like a really perfect marriage of voice and text, and that really continues throughout the book. It is probably the best fusion of voice and text that I have ever heard. And I've heard a lot of really great narrators, or people who have narrated an audiobook. I think what's really great about this one is it kind of ties back to what they talked about on the New York Times Book Review when they were talking about audiobooks, because I spent a lot of time thinking about that. And I do like an audio when it feels like the narrator is performing, as long as they're not overdoing it and making it seem cheesy. But what I liked about, say, Meryl Streep narrating Tom Lake and about Sissy Spacek doing To Kill a Mockingbird is it doesn't feel like they're performing. It feels like they're just using their voice to sort of hook you in, and they're engaging with the text more than they are, say, performing. And her voice, because she has that sort of Southern accent, it works really well. She embodies Scout and Scout's voice impeccably. But she also does Jem's voice really well. She does Atticus really well. She just does a really phenomenal job. So if you have read To Kill a Mockingbird before, I would recommend revisiting it through the audio, because it really makes the story flow in a way that I had not experienced before. The other times that I have read this book, and there have been at least 5 other times that I have read this book, it was all with a copy of the print book. So hearing Sissy Spacek read it really it caught me in a way, because I guess I hadn't really thought about how the story flows and how the words flow pretty effortlessly. And their construction in there is just so well done, and it revealed a lot of that. Obviously, if you can't tell, I'm a huge fan of To Kill a Mockingbird. This is something that obviously I love because I've read it at least 5 times before this one. So this was at least my 6th read of To Kill a Mockingbird, and I still love it. Every time I read this book, I'm usually at a different point in my life, and something different ends up really standing out. And one of the things that stood out to me on this one is just the really great sibling dynamic between Scout and Jem. And I live in a different state from my sisters, but my sisters growing up were my best friends. So I think because I miss my sisters a lot of the time, and I haven't seen them that much over recent years because of the pandemic and all of that, that aspect of the story really jumped out and spoke to me, and just kind of settled into my heart and made space in there. It's a really great sibling relationship. I would say it's up there with one of my other favorites, which is Holden Caulfield and his sister Phoebe in The Catcher in the Rye. I know a lot of people don't like that book, but it's a sibling dynamic that I really like. And I love the ending of this book so much. I won't talk about it. So there's no sense in being coy. A lot of the time recently, when I have been reading a book for my Pulitzer Prize project, I have tended to save my thoughts for my Pulitzer Prize deep dive, and I am saving a lot for my Pulitzer Prize deep dive. I have already started working on it. I haven't gotten very far into what I want to say. I'm hoping that by the end of next week, I will at least be ready to film. I don't know that I will film, but I should be ready to. So in this case, I've already talked about how much I love this book. It's kind of known, it's out there. So I think there are interesting conversations to have about this book, and I will have them in that deep dive. In the meantime, I'll just say the audio is spectacular. And if you haven't read this book and have been thinking about it, the audio is a great accessible way of doing that. Again, Sissy Spacek's read of the text is flawless, I would say. There are, of course, trigger warnings for this book. I would encourage you to look them up. If there are concerns for, say, abuse, use of the N-word, things like that. This is a very Southern book set in the Depression, so, you know, there's a lot that I'll talk about it in the deep dive. And one of the things that I want to talk about in that is the question of race, because I know a lot of people today refer to, not a lot, but a segment of people today refer to this as a sort of white savior narrative. I'll talk about that. And I will also talk about why this is probably America's most beloved book. It'll be really interesting, I think, too. I haven't really settled a lot of my thoughts on those, but I think there are very interesting conversations to have. So stay tuned for all of those things. I should also mention, because of getting Teddy settled, I've really slowed down my video production. I only got 2 videos out last week, and I only got 2 videos out last week, and I got 2 videos out this week. Usually, if all is going well, I aim for 3. I've also been feeling a little creatively bankrupt, and I think, again, a lot of that has to do with just getting Teddy settled in the house. I would like to get back to doing 3. I don't know when I will, but with everything going on, getting Teddy settled in the house, and work has been a little frantic lately, it's just been for my own benefit to only do 2. But I did manage to do a really interesting video that I had fun doing it. I'm glad a lot of people have resonated with it as well. Times 100 Best Mysteries and Thrillers of All Time. It will be linked down below. And it was just fun to do. So PSA that I forgot to mention before I started, you know, if you've noticed video output has slowed down, it's just, and I always have told myself, if I can do 3, great. If it becomes difficult, 2 will be fine. And in a pinch, 1 will be fine, just a Friday Reads. So far, 2 has really been my limit. And just putting that out there. So what was the physical book that I started after I finished Glaciers? I actually got a copy of Loved and Missed by Susie Boyt. Spoiler for my October book haul. And I started reading it. I'm really not far in. I think I've only really read the first chapter. Yeah, I'm on chapter 2, which is on page 14. However, the writing in this book is flawless. It's really good so far. Again, it's only 1 chapter and 14 pages, so a lot can happen. But this was one of my most anticipated books for the second half of 2023, and it's really living up to that. So I had ordered a copy through Montana Book Company, and it arrived. And in this, a woman named Ruth has adopted her granddaughter, essentially. Her daughter has been having struggles with addiction, and when she finds out that her daughter is pregnant, she eventually, there's an inciting incident that causes her to do this, but basically she sort of pays off her daughter to allow her to take her granddaughter and raise her. So this is sort of an atonement for mistakes that she feels she made with the daughter. It is a way of getting a second chance for this woman who is very sentimental and believes in the power of love. That is kind of the description of the book on the back. I have gotten elements of that in the first chapter, but yeah, again, these are things that could be very difficult topics for a lot of people, but I was really interested in reading it, and the first chapter really lived up to that. So I have not made it very far, obviously, but I'm really looking forward to it. I just wanted to emphasize the audio of To Kill a Mockingbird this week because I had been listening to it slowly. I don't listen to audiobooks quickly. I tend, unless the narrator is talking extremely slowly. So I listened to the audio of To Kill a Mockingbird at like 1.2. That's usually as comfortable, as fast as I feel comfortable going in an audiobook. But because I was listening to it slowly, and it's a 12-hour audio, I realized I was bumping up a deadline. So I'm filming this on Thursday, and I finished the book this morning. Tomorrow morning was the day that it was due back. So I really put emphasis on the audio of To Kill a Mockingbird just to make sure that I finished it. And my progress in Loved and Missed suffered pretty badly for that, but I'm really looking forward to picking it back up and getting into it now that I'm done with To Kill a Mockingbird. So I had a plan, and the plan was to do the audio of Tales of the City by Armistead Maupin next, because if in the Queer TBR Tackle, that is the book for the month of October. I'll have links to Queer TBR Tackle and the E.M. Forster read along for this year down below. I've fallen a little behind on the E.M. Forster read along, but Tales of the City is the book for October. So my plan was to jump into the audio of that next, but I was thinking and had requested the audio of Interpreter of Maladies, which is another book I've read a lot of times before. It's another Pulitzer Prize book. And with the release of Roman Stories, I had been wanting to do my reread and deep dive of this book. So the audio became available almost immediately. So now I'm trying to decide if I'm going to jump into Tales of the City or if I'm going to try to, squeeze this in before I do that. And I have not made up my mind. So one of those two books will be the next thing that I listen to on audio. I think that pretty much covers everything that has happened this week. If you have thoughts about any of the books that I have read, let me know in the comment section down below. If you have recommendations or if you want to tell me what you've been reading, I always love hearing what people have been up to in the reading world and what they're doing. So let me know in the comment section down below. And if you want to talk about what you've been watching, that is fine as well. Let me know in the comment section down below. As always, I really appreciate your time, and I will be back. Until next time, happy reading.